Hello and welcome to this episode, and in this episode we discuss about pseudocodes, and we have basically used the writings from the previous episodes where we discussed about algorithms, and we said that algorithms are basically the procedures and the processes that you want to take to solve a program or to solve a problem or to write a program. That's basically an algorithm, right? So if you want to write down how you want to solve a problem and you want to write it down on something other than code, so pseudocode is basically never the real C code or any other programming language code, but it's some type of a language that you understand and you can decide the actions and decisions that you want to take to solve this problem. So basically, for solving this problem that we have in here, take two numbers from the user, then show the result of the addition of these two numbers on the screen. We wrote this pseudocode. So basically, this is exactly a pseudocode. It is not in C programming language. Obviously, if we pseudocode, if we try to write this in a text editor in a program, obviously computer will not be able to run this, but this is basically a language that can allow us to understand how the flow of the program will be. So pseudocode could be in your own language. You can use diagrams and all sorts of stuff to think out how you want to solve a problem. An informal language for yourself and others to be able to see how to solve a problem, but it's not real code. But if you write down the pseudocode in a very concise format and you consider every single step that the computer needs to take to resolve that program, then you can exactly translate those lines of your pseudocode into computer programming language. So we can actually, instead of printf in here, obviously printf is from code, so we can change it to computer code, and then defining two variables, we can directly change this to computer code and then read into variables. We can change this to scanf statement, and just like that, each one of these lines of code that you can see in here, we can translate these lines of code directly into the computer code, and then the computer code will be able to run and give us the result that we want to achieve. So this is basically what pseudocode is. Now let's go to my laptop. We're gonna quickly write a pseudocode to solve this problem on the laptop, and quickly we are going to translate that pseudocode into real C programming language code and see that how thinking out in pseudocode can help us solve problems. So here we are on my laptop and we want to solve this problem. So write a program that takes in two numbers from the user and prints the result on the screen. So using pseudocode, we want to solve this problem. The first thing that we want to write the pseudocode for is to include the required headers. So this is the first part of our program. Secondly, we can write that create your main function, right? So secondly, we want to do that. Thirdly, then we want to prompt the user to enter two numbers. The third step that we want to take is to prompt the user to enter two numbers. After that, we are going to define two variables to store two numbers, and after that we are going to read into those two variables. After that we are going to add the two numbers from variables, and after that we are going to show the result on the screen. Basically, based on this pseudocode that we have wrote in here, we can actually write our code. So here I'm going to include the required header, include stdio.h, and then we need to create the main function, right? So I'm going to create int main void, and then we've created the main function. And then obviously all of these other pseudocodes are supposed to be executed inside the main function. We haven't explicitly wrote that, but obviously it's quite obvious that these lines of code are supposed to be executed inside of the main function. So prompt the user to enter two numbers, printf enter two numbers. Then we are going to define two variables. So let's define two variables, int num1 and num2, and then read into those two variables scanf integer separated by another integer, and read into those two variables num1 and num2, and add these two numbers from the variables. Okay, and here you can see that our pseudocode is not very explicit on telling us that we need to have another variable to store the addition of these two variables. So maybe we can modify our pseudocode and write down that create another variable to store the addition of the two numbers from the variables. So now we can create a result variable in here, num1 added to num2. See that sometimes your pseudocode could be ambiguous, so you can clarify it as much as possible. So printf, show the result on screen, printf, the result is result, right? So this is how we can think out the programs that we want to create in pseudocode, and then execute those pseudocode lines directly into computer program. So now let's go and run this program. Into two numbers, 3 and 4, and the result is 7. And that's it for this episode. See you in the coming episodes.